Welcome back to the GCSE Maths Pro YouTube channel. In this video, we will be looking at the topic of Capture Recapture. So, Capture Recapture is a really specific, really niche topic in the GCSE syllabus. It doesn't often always come up, but if it does, it's some really easy marks. So you definitely want to know how to tackle it. In other words, just practically memorize one formula, and then you're guaranteed 3 marks. The whole point of Capture Recapture questions is that we are asked to find a total population estimate. So it's normally for some kind of animal or insect or fish that we can't physically count how many there are, because that would just be too much effort and almost impossible. So for example, fish in a river, you're not going to be able to count them all, or some kind of insect that you're not physically going to be able to count them all, but you want to get a good estimate for the size of the total population. It's basically just a formula for that. And Capture Recapture, those words are referencing to the method that they use. They catch a certain amount of the population first time, they mark them or put a tag on them or some kind of identifier so that you know which ones you did catch on the first day. Then you release them, and then the next day you come back and you recapture some more. And from there you basically count how many have the marks on them, or how many are identified as the ones you caught previously, or how many are new ones. So you can see here I have got 2 versions of the formula written down because it just depends what your teacher has shown you, which one you're more familiar with. The second one you can see is actually rearranged so that the question that you're normally asked, which is the total population estimate, is already the subject, so you don't have to start rearranging. However, if you do prefer to use the unrearranged version, the first equation you can see, that's also fine. The other thing I would note is that obviously the letters are quite similar, so if you prefer, you can rewrite this formula or memorize it with different letters if you want to kind of make it actually seem relevant to each category. For example, for population estimate, instead of using N, you might prefer to use P for population, that type of thing. You can rewrite it however you want, it doesn't matter, as long as you use it correctly in the question, that's all that matters. So you can see here we've got capital M is the number caught and tagged or marked initially, so your number that you caught on day 1. Capital N is the total population estimate, that's actually normally what the question is asking us to find. Lowercase n is the total number caught the second time or the second day, and then lowercase m is more specifically the number caught the second time that are tagged or marked. So as I said, you can use whichever version of the formula you prefer, but I've got my version of the formula up in this corner just in case. So I'll show you a few examples and you'll see how it's pretty much the exact same question every time. The only thing that changes is the context. So here, the RHS wants to find an estimate for the number of dragonflies in one of their gardens. So we're estimating a population number. Obviously, in terms of dragonflies, it's impossible to catch them all and count them all, which is why we're estimating it. So you're going to be given 3 numbers here, and those 3 numbers we're going to substitute them in to estimate the total population. So on Monday, they catch 250 dragonflies and put a mark on them. On Tuesday, they catch 400 dragonflies, and 100 of those have marks on them. Work out an estimate for the total number of dragonflies in the garden, just literally sub it in. My other kind of trick, and I know this works for Edexcel, I'm not necessarily sure AQA, OCR, if your questions are written the same as this, then it will work. If they're written in a slightly different order, this trick doesn't quite work. But for Edexcel, what I tend to do is if you forget, just remember that in the exact order they've written the numbers, the first 2 you multiply and the last one you divide. So as in, multiply 250 by 400, divide by the 100. You can always do it that way for Edexcel specifically. Double check for any other exam boards if it also works. But just remember that M, capital M, was the number caught initially, so obviously on Monday, that's the 250, isn't it? In this case, M is the 250. Lowercase n is the number caught the next day. Lowercase m is the number caught the second day but are also either marked or tagged depending on the question. And you can see I've just subbed it in. But as I said, if you are doing Edexcel, you can just put them into this formula in the order they're written, so the first 2 multiplied and the third one divided. So as you can see for this example, it gives us an estimate of 1,000, which is the number of dragonflies. So that's all I'd write down literally, is that formula with the numbers subbed in and then the answer. And I think that's about 3 marks. So as long as you've got the formula, it is a really easy mark question. Okay, we've got another question here, just a slightly different context, and we also have a part B just in case they ask you that in the exam too. So some Year 10 students want to work out an estimate for the total number of rabbits in an area of conservation. On Wednesday, they catch 45 rabbits and put a tag on them. So that was our capital M, wasn't it? The number that you catch the first day. Then on Thursday, they catch 70 rabbits. So that's the number caught the second day. And find that 15 have tags on them. So that's lowercase m, the number that actually were tagged the second day. Work out an estimate for the total number of rabbits in the conservation area. So literally, as I said, you can just multiply the first two numbers together and then divide by the third one. Or if you are more inclined to memorize the formula, then that's the same thing. And put it into the calculator. So 210 is the estimate. So that would, as I said, likely be 3 marks. We've also now got a part B. So write down an assumption that the Year 10 students have made when estimating the total population of rabbits. So this question can be asked, obviously, with any context. What assumption has been made generally for this question? Usually what you need to say is that the tag has not fallen off. Or we've assumed that the tags have stayed on. Because the next day, what if some of the 70 rabbits that we caught, that we thought were untagged, actually were tagged the day before, but their tags have fallen off? Same thing with the marks. You can say that we've assumed that none of the marks have come off or that none of the marks have rubbed off, if that's the context. So something along those lines, that no tags have fallen off or none of the marks have rubbed off, that kind of thing, because that obviously would affect our answer then, wouldn't it? Because technically then this number would be incorrect. This number would be too low if some of the tags had fallen off. So that's the assumption just related to the question that you've been given. Okay, so our final question, we've got London Zoo want to work out an estimate for the total number of meerkats in their burrows. On Saturday, they catch 12 meerkats and put a tag on them. On Sunday, they catch 30 meerkats and find that 9 have tags on them. Work out an estimate for the total number of meerkats. So quite repetitive at this point, isn't it? We know it's going to be 12 multiplied by 30 over 9, and that's because our uppercase M is 12, the first number. The lowercase n is 30, the second number, and the lowercase m is 9. And if you sub it in, that's what we get. So our estimate here is then 40. There are 40 meerkats. We've also got now a slightly different part B. So the zoologists assume that none of the tags have come off between Saturday and Sunday. That's what we were saying in part B of the previous question, wasn't it? We've made that assumption. If the zoologist's assumption is wrong, so let's say that some of the tags have actually fallen off, explain what effect this would have on your answer to part A. So if the assumption is wrong, that means that some of the tags have actually fallen off, which means that this number here is too small. In reality, the 9 would actually be bigger. So think about what actually would happen if we do this calculation. The 12 and the 30 are still fine, aren't they? But what if it was actually 10 or 11? How would that affect your calculation? Now, you can actually test that out in your calculator and just see what would happen, can't you? You can test it out and see. If we were actually to divide by 10, for example, it would give us 36. Now, compare your answer to part A with our new possible answer. What effect would this have on our answer to part A? Well, our answer to part A would actually be lower, would be smaller, wouldn't it? So our answer would be smaller or less or lower or whatever you want to say in that case, or that there would be fewer meerkats, or the population estimate would be lower, anything like that. So they could ask you what assumption has been made in the first place, but they could also ask you, okay, this is the assumption that has been made, what effect does that have if the assumption is wrong? So just watch out, there could be a few different part B questions, normally just maybe 1 mark, but the main bulk of the question is fairly straightforward. So just a little recap here, the 2 versions of the formula, memorise whichever one you prefer, but otherwise thanks for watching this video. If you found it helpful, make sure to like and subscribe and leave down below any questions or comments that you might have.